What's up, everybody? It's Jordy back with some more heat. Today we're going to be adding another addition to the top 5 series, and today's subject will be Boruto. First, I'll give you a brief description of how I do my rankings. The rankings will describe the character's power 1 through 5. Level 1 is Genin level, level 2 is Chunin level, level 3 is Jonin level, level 4 is Kage level, level 5 equals 6 paths territory, and level 6 is pretty much indescribable, off the charts, the strongest fighters we've seen. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's get started. Move on. Alright, now we'll start with who in my opinion is the weakest character, and don't be too offended when I say this for all the hardcore Naruto fans, because I am one, but Sasuke does make the list. He'll be the weakest fighter in my opinion, and this is current Boruto. At the time that I'm recording this, we just got our first introduction to Ada and the start of the Code arc, so that'll give you some background. And in the manga, where we are currently, Naruto was just sent to another dimension by Kawaki. So without further ado, let's get started. Sasuke, in my opinion, will be the 5th strongest character within the Boruto series. I'll give you reasonings why, and then I'll also describe his abilities and where I would rank his abilities. I would say based off my scale of 1 through 5, Sasuke is a 4.8 fighter. He's almost 6 past level, but he's still not there yet, and this is after he's lost his Rinnegan, also known as Rinnegan. So corny as it sounds. But either way, a description of Sasuke's abilities at this time. Some of his strongest abilities when conditions in a fight. He's very skilled at Genjutsu, as we've seen. He still has access to his Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. He can utilize high speed and very powerful techniques like Amaterasu, which is nearly impossible to dodge. Another one is Kirin, a lightning style jutsu, which actually utilizes natural lightning and is also very strong and nearly impossible to dodge. We haven't seen him use it, but since we've seen previous fighters, case in point Madara, use it with less, we'll give him access to a full body humanoid Susanoo, but not a perfect Susanoo. We have not seen this in the manga or the anime, just to clarify, but this is my opinion. He has access to fire style and lightning style, even though throughout the series now we've seen him utilize ice style. He has access to all 5 natures, but we're going to stick to what he excels in. So, Genjutsu, off the charts. Ninjutsu, he's primarily skilled in fire style and lightning style. Taijutsu, also off the charts. And his Eternal Mangekyo gives him access to, high level of Genjutsu, Amaterasu, Susanoo, etc. And that's why I think Sasuke is the 5th strongest fighter on this list. The next person I mention will be stronger, obviously. Alright, and now to talk about the person that I think will be the 4th strongest fighter on this list, and we're going to mention him. The show is named after him, so without further ado, Boruto. We're going to describe his abilities, characters that are relative to him, and where I think his power scales on this list. For him, it does fluctuate because he doesn't have full control over the variety of abilities that he has. Now, to go in depth about those abilities, let's start off by saying he's a Jonin level fighter with 3.2 capabilities. Jonin level, stronger than a base Jonin, but not by much. He has access to water style, wind style, and lightning style, so he's very proficient in ninjutsu for his age. Taijutsu is off the charts. He has Genso Fist without the Byakugan, and he's normally good at Taijutsu by himself. He can utilize shadow clones as well in a creative way, like his father. Also has a large chakra pool, also like his father, but not to the same degree. So this describes his abilities. If we're covering Genjutsu as well, he doesn't primarily use it, doesn't even have a high resistance to it also. But that will describe Boruto's abilities in his base form, and why I think in his base form he is a 3.2 fighter. Now, when he starts using Karma, which he does have control over at this point at certain levels, he gets an overall boost in his stats for ninjutsu and taijutsu and chakra and experience due to the karma giving him the experience that an Otsutsuki has. This specific Otsutsuki would obviously be Momoshiki. So that makes him stronger. I would give him 3.4 at that stage. It gives him the ability to absorb the majority of ninjutsu as long as it's chakra based in nature and not using actual natural components like natural water or natural fire. But that would be his strength when he's utilizing the karma. When he goes into more stronger levels of utilizing his Otsutsuki abilities, that's where he starts to vary in power because he lacks control. His karma essence form, if you're not aware, was what he used when he fought Code. At that point, I believe he is a 4.4 fighter. Him and Code were going toe to toe. It looks like Code was struggling somewhat, but throughout that chapter, we know that neither one of them were showing their full power at that time. Code couldn't kill him because he saw Boruto as an Otsutsuki sacrifice, and then Boruto, just before he dropped to the floor, was stating that he was about to go all out. So neither one displayed their full power, but based off what we've seen, I'm giving him a 4.4. And like I said, that'll also be because he doesn't have control over that power yet. Now, if we go beyond that to his Boroshiki form, at that point, he's a 5.4 fighter. Another thing I did forget to mention about the essence and the Boroshiki form is it gives him access to a Byakugan. So I would say that obviously has to do with a lot of the boost in power he gets as well. But his Boroshiki, he's a complete monster. 5.4 in power. And like I was stating earlier throughout this video, 5 is Otsutsuki territory. So yes, I do think he surpasses or is equal to fighters like Naruto and Sasuke when they had full power, their full power without being nerfed. He is equal in relative to a fused Momoshiki because Momoshiki is taking over his body when he's already 100% extracted the DNA, the Otsutsuki DNA in his body. So when Momoshiki took control, he was going toe-to-toe with fighters like Kawaki. And also, Code had to really stay away from him because there was an obvious difference in power and Code couldn't kill him as well. So I would say when he's utilizing Boroshiki's power, he's obviously stronger than Code. But yeah, so that's where I would define his abilities. Thanks for listening. Alright, and now we're going to discuss who I think would be the third strongest on this list, and honestly one of my favorite characters within the series. His name is none other than Kawaki. One of the reasons he's one of my favorites is because he's a literal savage. If you watch the anime or the manga, you'll know this. But now we're going to get into the description of this character's abilities. He has access to ninjutsu, shinjutsu, and scientific ninja tools, among other abilities, and those will all be explained in depth. We'll start with ninjutsu. He has access to fire style, so he primarily excels in fire style ninjutsu, and he also has access to the shadow clone jutsu. Being a student of Naruto, he can use it in creative ways, as we saw in his battle with Ishiki. Now that covers his ninjutsu. Now on to shinjutsu. As you guys should know, shinjutsu is utilized by Otsutsuki. It's how they primarily use their chakra, and it's what ninjutsu was derived from. Kawaki's shinjutsu gives him access to the same abilities that we saw Ishiki use. The Sukakune, sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, allows him to shrink all inorganic matter, and he also is able to shrink selective organic matter. The only organic matter that he can shrink is himself. And he also has access to the Daikoku Koten. I can't pronounce these words too well, so don't expect me to. But this ability allows him, for example, to store and summon objects from a dimension where time does not flow. For example, him and Ishiki used it with these cubes that will disturb sensory abilities. We've seen it multiple times throughout the series already. This is a description of Kawaki's shinjutsu, and I will move on to his scientific ninja tools, which is literally his entire body. Now, his entire body, like I said, is a scientific ninja tool. It allows his body to transform at will, and it can transform in a variety of ways, which will give him advantages in battle. He can even create projectiles from his body. Now, some of the other abilities that are not in the categories that I previously described would be time-space ninjutsu. He can teleport to other dimensions like most Otsutsuki. And another ability that he has is the karma. Currently, his karma is 80% extracted, meaning he's 80% Otsutsuki, but he is no longer a vessel for an Otsutsuki since it was reconstructed by a model. The karma gives him the additional power boost of all his stats like strength, speed, and chakra due to the Otsutsuki's experience being overlaid into his body, and that's 80% of Ishiki's abilities. Another ability that the karma grants him is the ability to absorb about 90% of all ninjutsu. I say 90% because he can absorb all chakra-based ninjutsu. Any natural-based ninjutsu, he's not really able to absorb. And what I mean by natural-based, no, not sage mode, but I mean if somebody is utilizing natural water, or they summon natural fire, like Kashikojin did. Those are techniques that the karma is not able to absorb. But this describes Kawaki's abilities in its entirety. Now let's move on to reference characters for Kawaki. We have two. First, we'll go into Code with his limiters, somebody he fought at full power. The battle was going, decent. Code Shinjutsu was relatively useless against Kawaki Shinjutsu. And as we saw, and as Code stated himself, Kawaki easily overpowered Code. Another reference character that fared a lot better, even though it wasn't that long of a battle, was Boroshiki. When Momoshiki took possession over Boruto's body, him and Kawaki were going toe-to-toe. And actually, they were tied, in my opinion. You can review it yourself, but that's what I believe. It wasn't until Boruto started to regain consciousness that Boroshiki even took his first serious blow from Kawaki. And that's when the fight was relatively over. And now that we've described his abilities and reference characters alike, I will give you my rating for his power. I would say Kawaki is a 5.4 fighter, definitely in Otsutsuki territory. And I would say he's a matched for and tied with a fused Momoshiki. Evidence of that will be, his battle with Boroshiki. I would say Boroshiki was just as strong as fused Momoshiki. It's just he can't maintain that level of power like I stated previously, and like we saw in the manga. So that's why I believe Kawaki is a 5.4 fighter. Now we're going to talk about who I believe is the second strongest fighter on this list, and that person is going to be another one of my favorites. Not necessarily because of his character, but more so his abilities. This person will be Code without his limiters, to be specific. So now we'll go into defining this character's abilities. He has access to the white karma. He has access to Shinjutsu due to Amato's modifications. And he also has access to scientific ninja tools also due to Amato's modifications. First, we'll start with his white karma. The white karma is slightly different from the other karmas that we see the likes of Boruto and Kawaki utilize. The difference between the two is that the white karma doesn't allow the user to absorb ninjutsu. They're not an actual vessel for an Otsutsuki. It's more like they just inherit their will, as we saw in the most current Boruto episode. It also allows them to utilize 100% of that Otsutsuki's experience, which is greatly beneficial. It gives Code a great power boost of strength, chakra, and speed. Moving on to his other ability, Shinjutsu. Now, Code Shinjutsu, like I said, this would be the ability that makes him one of my favorite characters. His claw marks. He can create these markings, these claw markings, that he is able to teleport through. He can even teleport two people through these claw marks as long as he's making physical contact with them, but that is the limit. Only two people. And it's very similar to the flying Raijin, but he can also partially teleport different parts of his body. It's very useful. He can also use it for reconnaissance, to hear conversations if he has a claw mark in a certain area and others are unaware, or even to teleport his eyes so he can see in a situation without fully manifesting his body, just manifesting his eye through that claw mark if he'd like to. So this gives him the ability for reconnaissance, teleportation, and surprise attacks, partial transportation as well. So it's very beneficial ability. It's very useful, and it allows him to easily catch his opponents off guard. Now that we've described his Shinjutsu, let's go into a little sub-factor. This will explain one of his previous limits. He stated in the show, once he got his limiters released, that there used to be a limit to how many claw marks he could create when his limiters were in place. Now the same cannot be said for him without his limiters. Proof of this will be that he was able to engulf the Ten Tails in his claw marks, which allowed him to create the claw grime that we see in the manga currently. Now, on to his scientific ninja tool. His is by far, honestly, the least impressive that we've seen if we compare it to Kawaki's and Delta's. But, his scientific ninja tool, like those two that I mentioned, does give him body transformation abilities. It is specifically for his hands, which transform into claws, essentially. Very sharp talons that he can use to slice the throat of any individual he wishes. Almost like making his fingers literal knives. It's very useful. Very impressive. Now this will describe Kawaki's abilities. Now we're going to go into reference characters. For him, we only have one, since he's only fought one person since he has had his limiters released, and that would be Daemon. Daemon is a very strong person, and evident by the fight that we saw in the manga. Code without his limiters was no match for him. So it's very hard to gauge this person's ability, but we know narratively speaking, he's stronger than everybody else that I mentioned on this list. And the reason I say that is because throughout the show, it was said that Code with his limiters was weaker than Jigen. That's the whole reason that his limiters were placed on him. But after the fact, once those limiters were released, now he exceeds Jigen's power. And the people previously mentioned on this list do not surpass Jigen. So that's why I say Kawaki is the second strongest person. And although we don't see his full power due to the only person he fought being vastly stronger than him, I will give him a level 6. So take that as you may. Now for the strongest fighter on this list, and if I didn't mention it before, we're not counting people that are currently dead or not as strong as they were previously. So Baryon mode Naruto is not included in this video because we're going based off current events, and the same can be said for Ishiki because he's no longer alive. Now, the strongest person on this list, in my opinion, will be none other than Daemon. Daemon is going to be the highest on this list. So let's go into his abilities. He's a cyborg created by Mato, so he does have access to Shinjutsu, given that he has Ototsuki DNA. You can tell from his eyes, it looks like Dojutsu. And the abilities of his Shinjutsu is reflective in nature. If his palms is making contact with any other person, he'll be able to reflect any killing intent, any attack directed toward him or in his vicinity indefinitely with accuracy and crazy speed. The condition is, like I said, both of his pawns have to be making contact with another person. So it's not very useful in a one-on-one fight, but if it's a free-for-all or he's fighting multiple opponents, it can be deadly, extremely deadly, and very useful. Almost broken, since we didn't know how it worked previously. His taijutsu, unrivaled. Probably the strongest taijutsu user in the whole show, given that he knocked out Kawaki instantly. He knocked out Boruto instantly. Neither one were using their full power at the time, but we got to see Kawaki utilize his Shinjutsu, and it still didn't do anything. Daemon's speed and strength. With his speed and strength, he reacted instantly like it was nothing, with a smile on his face even, and then proceeded to knock them both out. And we saw what he did with 2 Code with no limiters. He made light work of him, even though it seemed like he did a little bit more, or had to put forth a little bit more effort than he did with Kawaki and Boruto. He still did so very easily, and that was without using his reflection ability, purely taijutsu. So that's the reason why his taijutsu is off the charts. With his taijutsu and his shinjutsu ability, this easily makes him the strongest fighter on this list, so I'll give him 6.2. Even though this is still kind of in the air because we haven't seen him go all out either. Sorry.